This is Darius, and using the lessons I've learned from over a decade's worth of experience playing this instrument and being an educator, I'm going to help Darius get a practice plan together and give him a few specific exercises to help him unlock the fretboard, memorize all the notes, and get away from playing the same shapes and patterns when he comes to create bass lines. Now, what I'm going to share in this video isn't the standard advice that you may find online, where people say, hey, find all the notes of G on your bass. I don't find those exercises very helpful, they're unmusical, and what I'm going to share today in this video, or in the lesson with Darius, is how to apply harmony to the fretboard in a musical way, so you can actually start to connect the notes to actually playing music and have the tools to improvise or create your own bass lines in different styles, from pop and rock to jazz, and we even talk about walking bass. We also talk about how to figure out what scale to play over any chord, even if that chord's a super tricky one with loads of extensions and alterations, like a D, 11, sharp 9, flat 13. We also talk about how to incorporate bass lines, or when you transcribe someone that you really like, how to take their vocabulary and apply it to your own playing, and there's also a load of other cool stuff. So you're about to watch a recording of the lesson. If you want to grab the PDF, the link is below. Let's dive in. What's like the 2 big things or 3 big things that you really want help with?
Well, I already wrote to you that I know quite a bit about harmony because of the classical education.
Great.
And stuff, but I'm struggling a little bit to really get it onto the fretboard.
Yeah.
So I know which notes would be okay to play in a walking bass line, so kind of, but it's not like that I have a toolbox that I just can pull stuff from, and really there's no arsenal that I can just I'll do that, or I don't have 8 licks that I can play 2-5-1 over.
So that's quite a big thing. I think when you get to the beginner stage, obviously you're past that. That's a whole different thing about just purely kind of understanding some of the theory, understanding some of the harmony, but then a big, I call it that intermediate or advanced hurdle, where you're okay, I know this stuff in my head, but how do I translate it to the instrument in a fluid way? Or the biggest exercise that really helped me, and I was taught this exercise by a famous jazz electric bass player called Jeff Andrews, and then I kind of passed it on to my students. And the biggest thing that's really helped students connect theory and stuff that they know to the fretboard is this fretboard freedom exercise. You may have seen it, but of course the blessing and the curse with bass and guitar in general is that it's very symmetrical, which is great because it means you can shift patterns over the neck, right?
Yeah.
The same pattern here, whatever. But that's also kind of a curse, because then it means you never end up really learning the fretboard. And I think that's one of the biggest things that can really help kind of visualize it. So the first thing that I'll be looking for is the key. We'll just be looking at this section. This iReal software kind of gives you the key. It's either G minor or some people like to think of this in the relative major, B flat major. Yeah. Now, the reason why I do that is because, first of all, when I look down at the fretboard, the first thing I'm visualizing, as soon as I know the key, it's just simply the major scale. The notes of B flat major or G minor will now kind of light up, right? And the biggest exercise that's helped me to do that is grouping the fretboard into sections. So group 1 being 5th fret and below, group 2 5th to 9th fret, group 3 9th to 13th fret, and then playing from the lowest note in that scale to the highest note. And that combined with, we're going to go over a bassline creation method that I teach, basically giving you the different options on what you can do and how to create walking bass lines. But and we'll apply it to particularly the first 8 bars of Autumn Leaves. But for now, if I asked you, for example, would you be able to play the B flat major scale, but the lowest note to the highest note, but sticking below the 5th fret.
Yeah. And then obviously.
Yeah, cool. But we're gonna go. That was perfect. But we're gonna go from like the lowest note in that
Okay.
scale,
Yeah.
which will be an F.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, and right up to the C.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, the whole thing, yes.
The whole, yeah. Yeah, awesome. Yeah.
All right.
Like I know, of course, you're an advanced player. You're like, oh, why am I practicing major scales? But it's actually just to like map out the entire part of this fretboard. Like, where is the B flat major scale? And then the exercise that I used to go over, and I used to do this with a teacher of mine when I was studying, and he would basically call out notes, and he'd say, okay, B flat major, and then it'd be like F sharp major, and then I'd have to switch to the next nearest note that I'm on.
Yeah.
So you have like full control of like, okay, E major, G major, and it's just like this continuous scale. I mean, that's the more advanced version.
Yeah.
At first, I would go through just every single key, and it gets you away from like always starting from the root and shapes and patterns.
That's what I also wanted to say. I immediately struggled a little bit when starting here on the F, and I was going for F major with the E.
yeah, exactly, yeah.
Because when you practice, you rarely start from anything apart the root, right?
Yeah.
And that's a great thing to break that habit.
Well, that's it. I mean, obviously, you're at the level, like, if you're a beginner, it's like, I would just teach from the root to the root, or, and then you maybe do 2 octaves, like you were doing. But now you know the shapes, is almost like now forgetting them. It's like, okay, I know how to play a major scale. Now it's like being able to, because this comes to like being able to apply this harmony on the spot. Now it's just like being able to nail it on the spot, like wherever you are on the fretboard. And the reason why this is also very useful, let's say you're playing like a simple 1-4-5 chord progression in B flat major. So B flat major, E flat major, F major. Now if I'm wanting to create a bass line that, say I've got like I would call it a skeleton groove. It's like 1, 2, 3, 4. Right, just a simple chord progression and groove, right? If I'm wanting to like add stuff to it, or make it a little bit more interesting than just playing roots, right? Just instead of just feeling like restricted to roots, and this goes for like walking bass lines, like Motown bass lines, like whatever. You can use other notes of that B flat major scale, so. Or like. I did a sneaky little chromatic thing, but pretty much like 95% of that was just the B flat major scale in that. And it's having that like kind of mastery of like, okay, those are the root notes, and then you're just, I was really just simply using notes from the scale, the B flat major scale, to connect those chords and connect those grooves. And I think that's the thing that people get confused by, is like if you see like an E flat major chord on a chord chart, that doesn't always mean that you play an E flat major scale. It depends on the context. So that if that E flat major chord was on a chord chart and you're in the key of B flat major, you wouldn't play an E flat major scale. You'd play a B flat major scale, so an A flat, right? It's kind of like the modes, but So what I usually do is as soon as students come in, because a lot of my students are kind of like more kind of at the level you're at, so and applying harmony is a big part of this, right? It's like you can kind of choose, depending on how many hours you've got and the intensity is of like how quickly you want to go through all of this. This is kind of like a checklist you can use. Of course, the same, that B flat major exercise that we just did, that would be the same in the relative minor G minor.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, cool.
Because they share the same material.
Exactly the same scale, and because we're not starting from the root, it doesn't, it doesn't.
Yes. That's great. Yeah.
Yeah, so really, I mean, that's great news because you don't, you really only need to practice it in major scales, and then when I'm thinking G minor, because it's the same notes, you just switch it in your head, and so when you look down and and I think of B flat major or G minor, it's like it's the same notes. And yeah, in group 1 you would do like with open string, so maybe with that open A and then maybe without. Yeah. Set a start date, so like say today, if you're going to do like 1 key per week, which just means like C major scale 1 week, F major scale the next week, it would take 36 weeks to complete the whole thing, and then you can put an end date and figure out when that would be. The big thing is not just kind of running up and down the scales, like that. Once you've got that, there's 3 steps that I usually take students through. But yeah, step 1 is just purely getting the notes down, right?
Yeah.
Right, cool. You can do it out of time, then do it in time. Here's the third thing that we're talking about, like musical application. What I usually go through with my students is select a chord progression from the options below. So I've created 5 very common chord progressions, all diatonic, meaning all using like, the number system and things. And then select the corresponding backing track. And what you want to be able to do is do what I kind of just did earlier when I said, hey, 1 chord, 4 chord, 5 chord, and be able to connect the root notes with notes from what I call the parent scale, right? So if you're in a key of B flat major, the parent scale is the B flat major scale. So here's chord progression 1, and it's just simply going the skeleton groove, the rhythm is written here. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 4 and the first component to any like baseline creation or whatever is like, what's the core, like I call it the skeleton groove because it's like the core, like you remove as much notes and rhythms as possible, and what's like the core groove what's the core rhythm that the groove is based on. Usually that's like the kick drum, right? If you're playing a walking line, exactly the same concepts apply. Apart from a walking line, you're restricted by like a quarter note pulse, right?
Yeah.
So 1, 2, 3, 4. So you have to figure out what notes you're playing. In some instances, it's actually simpler with walking stuff.
Yeah.
But the key thing here with the whole applying harmony to the fretboard, right? The big mistake people make is they practice that scale exercise and they just go up and down, but they never really apply it. So they learn the fretboard, but they're not really applying it in a musical situation. So what I try and get students to do is once you've gone through and learn, say all the major scales in group 1 of the fretboard, 5th fret and below. Yeah. Then start applying it to some grooves and chord progressions and Yeah.
This is also what I did in the video that I sent you.
Ah, amazing.
It was exactly such a chord progression, 1, 6, 2, 5.
Yes.
In C, I guess. And this is working for me quite okay. I get caught up in some struggles when I'm going apart from the obvious known terrain, right? But when I'm going for like chord tones, a little bit of chromatic approaches, and pentatonics, I'm usually fine.
Yeah.
But the pressure of the walking bass to just keep this rhythm through, and also the kind of, it's another language, right?
Yeah.
Of connecting the chords. I would be quite comfortable with throwing different stuff over C and F and maybe even 4 chords.
Great. If you haven't already, make sure to give some love to Darius in the comments below, as he was the one that allowed me to share this recording so you could benefit from it. As you can probably tell, he's already a killing bass player, he's picking up things quite quick, and I'm really excited to watch his journey over the next few months as he starts to implement some of these exercises. If you'd like to hop on a call and do a lesson similar to this and be featured on the channel, there is a link to apply below. you can click that link, fill out the form. To be honest, I don't know how many of these I will do, but if you are getting value from it, then I'll continue to do them.
And stuff, yeah.
The big thing as well, though, is just when you do this specific exercise, obviously not on a gig, but when you do this specific exercise, like keep everything, like restrict yourself to that section. With the walking line stuff, this is really interesting. The difference between like jazz and walking bass and then like pop music and stuff is that and the thing around walking lines, a big concept that is quite important. Obviously, people know that beat 1 is important, but beats 1 and 3 are typically what you would call the strong harmonic beats. Like, so you'd want to play, you know, a stronger line on that, right? And then beat 4 is usually when you have those different options and those, you know, chromatic notes, scale note and stuff like that.
All right,
So a big thing that I think is quite helpful is actually just is writing out some like formulas that you can use and then applying that to some chord progressions. And actually doing this again at a time and actually writing out the notes as opposed to trying to immediately improvise a walking bass line.
All right, it's okay. That's encouraging because I thought to myself for a little time, well, I could just sit down and write stuff that would be probably all right. But I wanted to, in this case, maybe to shortcut to just going slow and doing it on the spot. But of course, it's viable to just go first writing and then it transfers to the mind, right? And you can access it.
Yeah,
I guess.
You know what really helped me with that is, I can't remember who said this, but this completely changed my idea of like improvisation and things. The fact that composition and improvisation are the same thing, it's just that improvisation is in the moment. And obviously to get to improvisation, you need to be able to compose. Of course, composition is not in the moment, so you have like all the time in the world to compose this beautiful walking bass line. But one really, really useful thing with the walking bass line stuff is, of course, transcription. Like say, you know, Autumn Leaves, you transcribe like Sam Jones, right, on the famous Miles Davis, Cannonball Adderley, Autumn Leaves instrumental version, right? You transcribe like a chorus of his bass playing. You take some of his vocabulary, you take some of these formulas or rules, I say rules like guidelines, and then you essentially create your own, you write out your like version of a Sam Jones walking bass line. It's like if you're trying to incorporate a new word into your vocabulary, you'd not just only use new words, you try and mix it in with things that you already know, and then new phrases. So you start to kind of, the two, it doesn't just become like John Coltrane and jazz or whatever, it becomes like a mixture, you know? And that's the same with the walking lines. Like, I mean, I encourage my students all the time to like write out walking lines because it's a way of, you're writing something out and you're being very intentional about it, and you're almost creating like, quote unquote, the perfect walking line. And then you start to, and then you learn that walking line, you get the patterns, you know, you get like what a walking line looks like, feels like, sounds like, what it feels like on the fretboard. And then, you know, you go through that process again and again, you incorporate some vocabulary from other players, you write out your own walking lines, you learn your own walking lines, and then it slowly starts to kind of seep in to your, when you want to improvise a walking line. So you're not really like thinking when you go and create a walking line, you're just kind of, you know, you're just kind of, I don't know, playing, or just like like when you speak your own native language, you just kind of communicate. Like you're thinking about the idea that you're communicating, but you're not thinking about the notes. You're not like in the weeds. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does, and that's the feeling I exactly have. I can, up to a certain extent, I can rely on my feeling to just feel, all right, now I can go to the third of the next chord. It's just lying there, right? But then when things get more complicated or I just don't know the tune that well, then I get caught up because it's not fully there in myself, in my playing, and maybe it's too far up the fretboard, or it's just a chord change that I haven't played a lot of times till now. So that will help probably a lot, yeah.
Yeah, and then of course, like recognizing common cadences. Because I think a big difference between jazz and popular music is jazz is built on cadences as opposed to like popular music. Typically, it's all around like one key center. Similar to the exercise about, you know, trying to play a walking line, trying to play your scales in this area of the fretboard. You can also do that with walking lines. So once you get more comfortable with it, let's say, you know, we're just going to focus on these first 3 bars of Autumn Leaves, because it's a 2-5-1. Yeah. It's like, okay, let's just start on the root, so C minor, but then let's try and go as far as I can up in this area of the fretboard, and then kind of almost have this continuous like wave.
Okay.
Yeah, but like being very aware of where, like, what notes I'm playing on which beats. And I'd actually sometimes do this at a time. So you could go like, okay, and then I'm going to an F, cool.
Yeah.
I know B flat.
Yeah.
So like kind of almost trying to make it as like a smooth ascend and then a smooth descend. So I'll go through the whole 8 bars of the first bars of Autumn Leaves. I'll start from maybe a high C. I'll stick to the only this area of the neck.
Yeah.
I found like whenever I'm like improvising, and the biggest thing that's helped me, it's kind of ironic, but to make yourself feel more free when you're improvising, restricting yourself is the biggest thing.
Yeah, that's exactly the thing I told you before. All the doors are open, so I can't go through any of them.
Right,
So
yes.
I'd rather close some of them and then have a clear decision.
Yeah. And like, I think there is value, and there is great things, and there's great players that use more like angular lines, and I think that's good to do. But just at first being able to create such a really smooth line that just goes through the changes. So something like, you know, and again, I might just do this at a time. So, okay, now I'm on F. I'm going to B flat. I'm just going to walk down the scale. Nice. Okay, I'm on E flat now, and I hit the 3rd right there. Okay, that's the A. Okay, that was alright, yeah. Sometimes it's like you're trying to figure out how can I make it as smooth as possible, and it's almost like sometimes you run out of notes. Could you try and play like a walking line, like just kind of out of time, like just on these 3 bars, going from like a high, like high, and then kind of descending.
Yeah. I mean, I can do the one step thing without any chromatics in this case.
Yeah, so that's...
So I would go that way to the E flat, if I need to continue.
Yeah, I would probably go like B flat, B, C, D, E flat. Yeah. Or if I wanted to go down to the 3rd. So you could go like B flat, A, G, if you want. Yeah, right. Nice. If you'd like to see more videos like this one on the channel, then make sure to let me know by hitting subscribe and the like button on this video. This really helps more than you know, because it allows YouTube to show this kind of information, kind of behind the scenes type stuff, to the people that really need it. One really useful thing that really helps is like like when people are like, hey, you know, I can see this D7 flat 9, maybe it says like flat 9, flat 13. The easiest way to figure out what scale to play on any given chord is to first take the chord tones, so the root, third, fifth and seventh, so on this D7, right, so you got D, F sharp, A, and then C. And then fill in the gaps, so the second note, the fourth note, the sixth note, fill in the gaps of the chord tones with notes from the parent scale, the key that you're in.
So it would be E flat.
Yeah.
Right? Then the G.
Yeah, here.
It's major, right?
Yeah.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, it's a weird sounding sound. Yeah.
All right.
The Spanish scale, they call it sometimes.
So it's kind of the scale that you would play on a dominant chord in a minor key.
Exactly. And the cool thing is...
Oh, it is, yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
No,
okay,
you got it. But you know what?
It took me a time,
You know, you wouldn't have known that if you just were like, hey, like a D7 scale, okay, right? But with a flat 13, okay, cool. That's what it says on there, but that's a shorthand. And actually, you know, if you wanted to be really fancy, you could play the natural second, which would be an E. But actually, on that D7, the most like inside sounding scale is the one where you take the chord tones. So, for example, you'd have a D, like we just did. So D, okay, F sharp. Because the chord tones have to be in the scale for it to be that chord, right?
Yeah.
So you've got those chord tones, D, F sharp, A, C, like the root, third, fifth, seventh, and then the notes in between. You know, you can write out the parent. I call it a parent scale, right? Because it's all the chords are based on this scale, right?
Yeah.
So the B flat major scale there. Yeah, the second note usually of the D7 scales in E, but there is no E in the parent scale, so it's actually an E flat. Yeah. And that's kind of how you figure out, like, and that goes for like really hard chords, like with crazy extensions. Most of the time, the most inside sounding scale is the chord tones, and then filling in the gaps with the notes from the parent scale. And that gives you the scale to play on that chord, which is cool. The bassline creation thing, and this goes for walking bass lines or well, any type of bass line, and you'll see, maybe we can look at some Jameson lines because he follows like all of these rules. So the different options that you can play, particularly on beat 4, but this goes for like whenever you want to connect a root note to another root note. So yeah, you got scale note, fifth above, or fourth below. Short for chromatic, and then pentatonic, and that kind of just goes for anything. Like if you look at any Jameson lines, like typically he's going to be following like one of these. Like the last note he plays before hitting the next root note is going to be either a scale note above or below the target note. A fifth above, like, okay, I'll give some examples. So let's go from a B flat major chord to a D minor chord. How about that? So we're going from a B flat major chord to a D minor chord. And we are in the key of B flat major. There's a couple of ways to go from that. Let's do it in this area. So there's a couple of ways to go from 1, 2, 3, 4 to the D minor, 2, 3, 4. And yeah, the first way is if you wanted to add a passing note or something, you can go B flat major. The target note is D, so a scale note above D is going to or cool. And then the other one that's kind of the most natural, like the most inside sounding one that, like for example, you wouldn't do loads of crazy chromatic stuff on maybe a country song or a pop song, or not as much, depending on, you have to be a bit more tasteful with it. But the other one that's very common is a fifth above the D. So what would that be?
The A.
Yeah. Or the A, the octave below, which would be the And like the cool thing is like really those two, particularly those two, so a scale note above or below the target note that you're going to, or a fifth above, fourth below, are typically the most like inside sounding, smoothest ways to connect chords. So you could do, if you're going from this B flat major for a bar to the D minor, you could use notes from the pentatonic, like, but you want to make, you know what I mean? So it's like, you could do like root note, pentatonic stuff, make sure that the last, so there, oh, well, I don't know what I played,
you played.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. Yeah, but the last note, if I went, I mean, it sounds fine. And going from the root note to the root note will always work. So like root note to root note, the fifth above, fourth below, or a scale note above or below. If you make sure that the last note you play is that note before you hit the target note, the bass line is going to sound good. And
it's just creating like a fake dominant feeling.
Kind of.
For a very short amount of time, and that's pretty great. Take this example, right? B flat major to D minor. I feel I would be very. I had to be very far in the back of the measure to make this work, because it's like it conflicts the third of the chord. I think I'd rather
100%.
go from that direction to not conflict the third of the chord.
Yeah, I would play, like if I was going to do that and the groove was like 1, 2, 3, 4, and I was playing this and I wanted to add a passing note, I probably wouldn't go I wouldn't do a whole beat on the chromatic note.
Just short amount of time.
Yeah, and that's what I kind of mean by like handling it with care a little bit. And it depends on the situation and stuff. But yeah, typically, But the cool thing is like before, so you've got the root note, then you've got the stuff in the middle, and then you've got like the connecting note. And typically as bass players, I guess an exception would be walking bass lines, where you can play maybe the third or whatever, but most of the time we're playing the root on beat 1, so that's catered for. And then the stuff in the middle is based on the skeleton groove. So if the skeleton groove is that groove from earlier, like 1, 2, 3, where you're just going like boom, boom, which is a really common skeleton groove.
Yeah.
So I'd take a groove like that and then just figure out what nice sounding ways to get from one chord to another. And the interesting thing, and then the other option, so you've got root to root, which will always generally sound good, just going from root to root. I don't think it's always the most melodic, but it can sound fine because you're literally going from that chord to that chord. I think the best ways to connect chords, or like the ones that sound most inside the harmony, is like a scale note above or below, or a fifth above, fourth below. And then you've got the chromatic note, which is like the spicy one. And then you'll also see Jameson and other players, like the last note they play before they hit the target note. And I'd probably put this somewhere in the middle. If you've got like chromatic note here, which is super spicy, and a scale note and fifth here, which is like very inside, is the pentatonic scale, right? So I think I went, so like I'm going from an F to a D, which is in the, and I should say the parent pentatonic scale. So if you're in B flat major, parent scale is B flat major, the pentatonic scale is the B flat major scale. Yeah, and that will always sound good as well. And that you can apply that to your walking lines as well. So those rules that we just talked about, like the chromatic approach or the scale above, scale below, that would be, in a walking line, that would be like on the fourth beat. So I think about like beats 1 and beats 3 as like the strong beats. Typically you'd want to play like a chord tone on those. again, I mean, obviously there are always exceptions to the rule, but if you're just going to create like a good, a solid walking bass line, it'd be beats 1 and 3 would be a chord tone. I think about beats 4. Beat 4 is like the note that's connecting this chord to this chord, and that follows those rules, like root to root, scale note, And then I think about the second one is like a connecting note, but between beats 1 and 3. So that's where you can get interesting lines, like if I'm going to do a walking line now between B flat major and D minor, I could go like B flat, like I could do something like, if I wanted, as long as I play a chord tone on beat 3, I could go almost like a chromatic note above, going to the 3, the beat 3, which is F, and then maybe a chromatic note below the target note, which is D. So then, which is really like quite an angular, outside sounding walking line, but because you're playing the chord tones on the strong beats, it will, it will sound fine, you know. Yeah, so and I think when you write it out and when you take it really slow and you do walking lines at a time, you actually have time to think about the notes you're playing and then get that into your ears, under your fingers, and how it feels. Anything else? Go on.
I think when I just stick to this vocabulary that I know, that I apply to normal pop rock stuff, I think I can kind of get away in slow walking bass lines. But I need the stuff that you showed me earlier to just really be able to follow this wave pattern. Because I think that this gives me the little elegance that I lack now. Because sometimes I find myself stuck in patterns, like I would do. And playing the same stuff. All right, okay, he's playing now chord tones, right?
Okay, two exercises to help you with that as well. So you can do the scale thing where you restrict yourself, you know, 5th fret and below, 5th to 9th, 9th to 13th. But also do that with triads. So, you know, look, and again, not starting on the root. So, so that was like B flat major, but on the lowest note to the highest note. And then also an amazing exercise that really helped me, because pentatonics are everywhere and probably the most like useful scale to know. Say a B flat major pentatonic or G minor pentatonic is what I call the pentatonic zigzag exercise, where you go, again, not from the root, but you're going from the lowest. This isn't really a grouping exercise. It's more like you're going, and when I say up, I mean up in pitch. I'm pointing down, but
of course.
Sometimes students are like, I go up, and then they're like, wait, what?
Well, it's just the only instrument where it's confusing, like just guitar.
So I mean in pitch, right? So you go up in, like, you could say first position, right? So I'm going up the B flat major pentatonic, right? I was using open strings. Then I shift and go into like this position, right? And I go down, and then I shift, right? So you're just covering the whole fretboard, and that's where you hear, like, you know, all those like crazy gospel guys or whatever who can do that. But it also helps you with like soloing, with like bass line, you know, like bass line creation or whatever. Oh, and then one more thing, you can break up the fretboard vertically and horizontally. Obviously, we've just broken up, we've restricted ourselves to 5th fret and below, and then 5th to 9th, 9th to 13th. But obviously, you can do that, the same exercise, but on one string. That was also something that I practiced a lot. So if we were going to take a B flat major scale, but like lowest note in the B flat major scale to highest note, you know, up to like around the 13th fret, like, and then back down again, and then on, you know, lowest note in B flat major scale on the A string is an A, right? And then you go up. It also kind of gets you shifting together and stuff like that, because you have to do big shifts. I think that's just going to be the biggest thing that's going to help you more than anything else. If that's the number one thing that you want help with and applying harmony, part of that is like knowing where the notes are and stuff, but and which is those exercises. And then just make sure like you're applying it in a musical context, and that's where it comes like, okay, I'm going to try and create a bass line on a 2-5-1 or just take common chord progression, the 1-6-2-5 in different keys, and I'm just going to stick to this area of the neck. It's like just taking stuff you already know and then applying it. Cool. Was that all helpful? Any questions?
Yeah.
Or?
Yeah, definitely. I see. I just have to put time in it, of course.
Yeah.
There's obviously no magic button that you can press, but the biggest takeaway for me, I think, is practicing these scales without starting from the root.
Yeah.
And just separating these things so that the scale isn't dependent on the root. They can just, because this also, if I can do that, then I can think the scale through a more through a wider part of the song, because it applies there, right?
Yeah.
And even if the chords change, I can still have the scale in my head, even if I'm not playing the root. And that's what will be different for me now when I get down these exercises.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm so excited. It's so exciting seeing like a student as well, like you have this unlock and it's like, okay, here's what I need to focus on, and then like that'll be you, like, you know, that whole getting major scales down across the fretboard, it takes like 6 months. And some people are like, oh, you know, learn the fretboard in 30 days. It's not like that. It takes a long time. But at least like, you know what to do now. So yeah, cool. If you'd like to learn more about bassline creation and how to create jazz walking bass lines, then click this video next and I'll see you there.